Are you wanting to get into Jane Austen, trying to read it, but you need a little bit of help trying to understand it? You could join a private book club with Frances. You set the timeline, you set the agenda. Through video calls, emails, chat with Frances, learn more about the story. And she's going to help you understand Austen. And you know what? That would make the world a better place.
Kia ora, welcome to the Much Austenite. I'm Frances Duncan, author, Austenite life coach. My co-host is Emma Dunning.
Recovering sinusitic.
And our canine co-host, who you can hear scrabbling around in the background, is Bingley. Today we're discussing chapter 13 of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. So drama. They're all going to go on an outing except Colonel Brandon gets a message and has to rush off to London and will not tell anybody why. Marianne and Willoughby are dicks about it. And then they run off in his carriage and go to Ellingham alone. Scandal.
Super scandal. Everyone knows that you shouldn't do that. Is Mrs. Smith in residence at Ellingham?
It's clear that they don't see her while they're there. But if she did know that he had been there with the girl while she was there and hadn't introduced her, etc., and was behaving quite badly, I think she would have asked him to leave sooner than she does. She is a very moral, upright woman.
But there are servants. And if she goes away, the minute she comes back, the servants are going to tell her that Willoughby's brought a girl to the house.
I don't know. Willoughby's very charming. Maybe he's got the servants on his side. He's eventually going to be their master. We don't know.
Spent a considerable time there walking about the garden and going all over the house. So they find this out because Mrs. Jennings has asked her servant to ask from Mr. Willoughby's groom.
Which is so a Mrs. Jennings thing to do. Other people don't talk to the servants, but she's like, can you get me the gossip? But again, it's opening them up to the gossip of servants. Not good.
It seemed very unlikely that Willoughby should propose or Marianne consent to enter the house while Mrs. Smith was in it, with whom Marianne had not the smallest acquaintance. So Eleanor certainly believes that Mrs. Smith is home.
So she must be up in her sick chamber while Willoughby's parading around the house like he owns it, which I think is probably worse. And men and women should not be alone together, especially in an enclosed space. Servants are not chaperones. Servants can be paid off. He totally could have had his way with her in that house. In the, I think 2007, 2009 Sense and Sensibility, it looks like he was intending potentially to seduce her in Ellingham.
Marianne's certainly completely unaware of it. She's prattling about the remarkably pretty sitting room upstairs and the size of the rooms and the furniture and on one side you look across to the bowling green, and so she's not distressed.
I never spent a pleasanter morning in my life.
And she's speculating about new furniture, and she's clearly seeing herself living in this house.
While the current mistress is still there. That's quite tacky. Like, we're waiting for her to die so he can get in and I can move in?
Willoughby surely knows that this is the conclusion she's going to be drawing. At the time that he's taking her there, is he lulling her into a false sense of security? Is he also extrapolating Marianne living in this house too?
We can only guess about his motivations. As you said in a previous episode, he has been a bad influence on her, influencing her towards being indelicate and being rude to other people, and this may just be an extension of that. I can get her in a house alone, and she's comfortable doing that. What else could I do with her?
So it's so hard to tell, because it could equally be that he is just really thoughtless, and he really likes this girl, and maybe he is thinking I could end up married to her and living in this house.
I feel like that's a bit of a stretch given what we find out about Willoughby.
Yeah.
But it is possible. Maybe he's caught up in the story like Marianne is, and he's not thinking about practicalities. It takes Eleanor having a pretty harsh word to Marianne for Marianne to go, okay, maybe it was ill-judged. Because initially Marianne's like, look, if I was doing wrong, I would have felt it. I wouldn't have enjoyed what I was doing because I know it was wrong. Good moral person. And Eleanor's like, doesn't mean it's okay. Also, look at people gossiping me out. She's like, oh, Mrs. Jennings, she's going to gossip no matter what I do. Like, just because Mrs. Jennings is gossiping doesn't then turn it on its head that it's all right for you to behave badly because Mrs. Jennings is going to gossip anyway.
This is so wrong. This is not having a third dance at a ball. Go into someone's home that you have not been introduced to and tour around their house, speculating about the furniture with a man and no chaperone. This is so obviously wrong.
And Eleanor specifically says, even if this was going to be your house one day, it's not justified what you've done.
It's so interesting that Marianne is so blinded she can't see that.
Even after she admits she's done wrong, she goes into, here's how I'd redo the house. So she's still not actually feeling that I've done wrong. She is really caught up in the story and she's caught up in the fantasy and the romance of everything. That does happen to people, especially when they're teenagers. And it's her first boyfriend and he's got a great house.
We find out some more about Colonel Brandon's secret. They're all sitting there at breakfast at the park, ready to go out on their trip to Whitwell. And the letter is delivered. Colonel Brandon changes colour and hurries from the room. And they are speculating on what might have been in the letter. And Colonel returns, apologises in very appropriate ways to the ladies, as he should.
He addresses Lady Middleton because she is the chaperone, the hostess of the event, and it's in her house to apologise to her. Correct behaviour. Mrs. Jennings, not showing correct behaviour, going, I know what this is about. It's all good. And then the second he leaves, turns to Eleanor and is like, do you want to know? I can tell you.
And so we hear about Miss Williams, his natural daughter.
And when they say natural daughter, they mean biological daughter. She may not be acknowledged as his daughter, but she is his biological daughter. Not actually correct. We find out later, not his daughter. Austen very specifically places Colonel Brandon overseas with his regiment when the mother is pregnant and the child is born to ensure that you cannot read into it that he's the actual father. But Mrs. Jennings doesn't know this and she loves a good bit of gossip. It's funny to her, and later when she's talking about Marianne marrying Colonel Brandon, she's like, oh, there is the little daughter. That's fine. She can be apprenticed out. It's not going to cost much. And that really hurt to think that Mrs. Jennings wasn't even thinking of her as a real person. She doesn't matter. This poor girl who hasn't done anything wrong just because of the way that she was born.
Status. And, yeah, legitimacy. But regardless of the relationship that Colonel Brandon has with her, whether she is or is not her daughter, as it turns out, this matter is related, he cares. He changes colour. He resists pleas from Marianne, whom he really likes. She is kind of begging him to find a way to continue the outing, but he's resolute.
He knows what's right and he will not shift that. He cannot afford to lose 1 hour. This is his responsibility, and sure, everyone's going to be pissed at him and he can't tell them why, but he has to go to London. His foster daughter has finally contacted him. She's pregnant. He's probably terrified. Look, okay, again, spoilers. 200 years. Get with it. program. But it also shows the kind of person that Willoughby is, because he immediately turns to Marianne and, I don't think it's real, whatever that letter was. He wrote it himself because he didn't want to go to a party. What a dick move. It's made worse by the fact that we learn later that it's because of Willoughby. He's like, Colonel Brandon sucks. Actually, Willoughby, it's you that sucks. You're the reason that this is happening. Rereading, when you have the knowledge of what happens later, makes you look at scenes really differently. And having the knowledge of Willoughby and his responsibility in this makes the fact that he's being a dick 100 times worse.
If you're reading it chronologically and you don't know, you see Colonel Brandon as morally upright. But do you see Willoughby as irresponsible or witty and fun?
I think at this point he's witty and fun. We're still a little bit in love with Willoughby, and he and Marianne are just having a wee laugh between themselves. You're like, that old guy, he's no fun. We're young and fun and hot. He just doesn't want to go to a party. You're like, oh yeah, I wanted to go to the party.
Which is, I guess, the point of the unfolding of people's characters during the novel, that Jane Austen's carrying us along with that. She wants us to find the coupling of Willoughby and Marianne fun and effervescent. I mean, we're supposed to see that they're a bit blind, but we're supposed to be giving them some leeway, young love and all that. We're supposed to find them appealing at this point.
I think first-time readers probably think that this is endgame. Willoughby and Marianne will be together. And that's what makes it that much more devastating when they're not. When it all goes to hell, when he just fucking disappears. You're like, what is happening? They're this perfectly happy couple. I don't understand. Sir John specifically says that Willoughby has got up 2 hours earlier than normal to be able to come here to go to this party. That's one of his arguments for why it's such a big deal that Brandon's knocking this thing off. And this may subtly indicate that Willoughby is a bit of a layabout.
Because it's not that unusual to get up for breakfast.
Is it indicating that he's lazy? That he, like the Middletons, is the idle rich?
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really subtle way that Austen slipped in there. There's also him suggesting they make a bet. He's joking. He's not literally suggesting they make a bet. I would lay 50 guineas. The letter Colonel Brandon has is of his own writing. And maybe that's also indicating that he's a gambler. So we are getting subtle stuff about Willoughby. He's already convinced Marianne to go to his aunt's house without his aunt knowing. And now he's talking shit about some guy. He's a gambler and lazy.
A layabout.
But we don't recognize any of this till much, much later. And then you come back and go, oh, hold on, there were breadcrumbs. Shouldn't have trusted that guy. And that's kind of the genius of Jane Austen. Each time you read, you notice these details that were there. So when the thing happened, it shouldn't have been quite so shocking because Jane Austen was quietly telling you what was going to happen, but in such a way that you didn't necessarily pick it up.
That's why it lasts for 200 years.
The excursion, as they call it, that they're going on is to Whitwell, which is a property owned by one of Colonel Brandon's brother-in-laws. So that's assuming one of his sister's husbands.
Yeah, we don't hear anything else about Colonel Brandon having siblings apart from the dastardly brother.
And in this chapter, Mrs. Jennings is asking about her sister. I hope she's not too sick. She's obviously being some kind of sick. I hope she's not worse. But yeah, we have this idea of it's just him and his brother who sucked a lot, but thankfully died early, which meant that Colonel Brandon could get the family home and build it back up and be the good man. Eleanor's idea of what the party was going to be like, that she would end up wet, fatigued, and frightened, is kind of wild because they have like a little river where they can go in boats, and that was part of the plan.
Eleanor. Going to be frightened by boating.
It had rained all night, so they weren't sure whether it was actually going to be fine enough.
Well, just honestly, Eleanor, she's 19 years old. She does need to be shaken up.
But I wonder if it's also, oh God, another one of Sir John's parties. And probably Sir John is not that great at organising parties. Sir John had formed these parties to visit the grounds for the last 10 years, at least twice a summer. So he's obviously knows the place well. We're going to sail on a noble piece of water.
I suppose being stuck in a boat with Lady Middleton is just as bad as being stuck in a ballroom with Lady Middleton, or Mrs. Jennings for that matter. But not frightening. She must be frightened of sailing. I should cut her some slack. Maybe she hasn't been sailing before.
It appears a bold undertaking, love that terminology, considering the time of year and that it had rained every day for the last fortnight. They're in autumn at the moment, heading into winter. So, yeah, not the time to really go and have picnics and go sailing. But Sir John so desperately just needs to get out of the house and do something. Also, he hasn't been able to go hunting because it's been raining. He's probably going mad. That's our discussion of Chapter 13 of Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I've been Frances Duncan. This has been Emma Dunning. Thank you for listening, and we wish you happy reading.